My name is Chloe Cole, and I am a detransitioner. Another way to put that would be, I used to believe that I was born in the wrong body, and the adults in my life whom I trusted affirmed my belief, and this caused me lifelong, irreversible harm. I speak to you today as a victim of one of the biggest medical scandals in the history of the United States of America. I speak to you in the hope that you will have the courage to bring the scandal to an end and ensure that other vulnerable teenagers, children, and young adults don't go through what I went through. At the age of 12, I began to experience what my medical team would later diagnose as gender dysphoria. I was well into an early puberty, and I was very uncomfortable with the changes that were happening to my body. I was intimidated by male attention, and when I told my parents that I felt like a boy, in retrospect, all I meant was that I hated puberty, that I wanted this newfound sexual attention to go away, that I looked up to my brothers a little bit more than I did to my sisters. I came out as transgender in a letter I sent on the dining room table. My parents were immediately concerned. They felt like they needed to get outside help from medical professionals, but this proved to be a mistake. It immediately set our entire family down a path of ideologically motivated deceit and coercion. The gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty-blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question: would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? The choice was enough for my parents to let their guard down, and in retrospect, I can't blame them. This was the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care. I was fast-tracked onto puberty blockers and then testosterone. The resulting menopausal-like hot flashes made focusing on school impossible. I still get joint pains and weird pops in my back, but they were far worse when I was on the blockers. A month later, when I was 13, I had my first testosterone injection. It's caused permanent changes to my body. My voice will forever be deeper, my jawline sharper, my nose longer, my bone structure permanently masculinized, my Adam's apple more prominent, my fertility unknown. I look in the mirror sometimes and I feel like a monster. I had a double mastectomy at 15. They tested my amputated breast for cancer. And I was cancer-free, of course. I was perfectly healthy. There was nothing wrong with my still developing body or my breasts, other than that, as an insecure teenage girl, I felt awkward about it. After my breasts were taken away from me, the tissue was incinerated. Before I was able to legally drive, I had a huge part of my future womanhood taken from me. I will never be able to breastfeed. I struggle to look at myself in the mirror at times. I still struggle to this day with sexual dysfunction. And I have massive scars across my chest, and the skin grafts that they took of my nipples are weeping fluid today, and they were grafted into a more masculine positioning, they said. After surgery, my grades in school plummeted. Everything that I went through did nothing to address my underlying mental health issues that I had. And my doctors, with their theories on gender, thought that all my problems would go away as soon as I was surgically transformed into something that vaguely resembled a boy. Their theories were wrong. The drugs and surgeries changed my body, but they did not and could not change the basic reality that I am and forever will be a female. When my specialist first told my parents that they could have a dead daughter or a live transgender son, I wasn't suicidal. I was a happy child who struggled because she was different. However, at 16, after my surgery, I did become suicidal. I'm doing better now, but my parents almost got the dead daughter promised to them by my doctors. My doctors had almost created the very nightmare they said they were trying to avoid. So what message do I want to bring to American teenagers and their families? I didn't need to be lied to. I needed compassion. I needed to be loved. I needed to be given therapy to help me work through my issues, not affirm to my delusion that by transforming into a boy, it would solve all my problems. We need to stop telling 12-year-olds that they were born wrong, that they are right to reject their own bodies and feel uncomfortable with their own skin. We need to stop telling children that puberty is an option, that they can choose what kind of puberty they will go through, just so they can choose what clothes to wear or what music to listen to. Puberty is a rite of passage to adulthood, not a disease to be mitigated. Today, I should be at home with my family celebrating my 19th birthday, and instead I'm making a desperate plea to my elected representatives. learn the lessons from other medical scandals like the opioid crisis, to recognize that doctors are human too, and sometimes they are wrong. My childhood was ruined along with thousands of detransitioners that I know through our networks. This needs to stop. You alone can stop it. Enough children have already been victimized by this barbaric pseudoscience. Please let me be your final warning. Thank you.
Today's your birthday?
It is.
You're a beautiful, brave woman. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
A question for you, Ms. Cole, and first of all, thank you for being here. I've heard some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle use words like, this frightens me, this hearing. They're frightened by us having a hearing in which you are able to speak to the world about what you have gone through. And I've heard colleagues on the other side of the aisle say, life is worth it, in the context of pushing a particular worldview and saying life is worth it. I would just ask to say that I just want to make sure that you know, like from our standpoint, that your life is worth it, and that the people that have gone through this, that your lives are worth it. And I'd wondered if you'd like to comment on the worth of your life and the social pressures and the pressure placed on you to pursue a path that you now believe was not the correct path.
I think we're all on the same page here, that everybody's life and right to happiness is worthy. And that's what we're all fighting for, even if we don't necessarily agree on what that means. And if I may ask, would I be able to address another witness?
Through the chair, you may. So you may
Okay.
speak to me and reference any other testimony you wish to.
Okay. Well, Mrs. Reynolds.
And you can direct it to me and say that what Ms. Reynolds talked about you want to respond to, and you go ahead.
Well, I understood that Mrs. Reynolds is scared for her child. And I just want to set the record straight that I don't hate her. I don't think anybody in this room hates her. In fact, I see my own mother and my own father in her, and that she dearly loves her child, and she's doing the best with what she's been given. And unfortunately, it's not much. And for that, I'm sorry. I mean, I think every parent deserves the utmost grace and guidance with how to help their child. That being said, I don't wish for her child to have the same result as I did. I don't wish for anybody to regret transition or to detransition because it's incredibly difficult. It comes with its own difficulties, and it's not easy. And I hope that her child gets to have a happy and fulfilling adulthood, however that may look like.
Well, thank you for that, Ms. Cole. I think it was heartfelt, and I know that a number of us share your view. One last question as my time is winding down. Do you believe that the American healthcare system failed you?
On every single level.
Thank
My
you.
doctors and systemically.
Thank you for being here.
All right, Ms. Cole, I want to thank you again for being here today and for sharing your powerful testimony, especially on your 19th birthday, and that has been very helpful to us.
Thank you, sir.
I want to acknowledge what you said earlier, tearfully. It was appropriate. Everyone here, as you said, our hearts go out to everybody. The families, everybody affected. We're trying to strike the right balance, and we do believe Congress has a role here. And I appreciate your testimony for providing evidence of that. And I wanted to ask you first about your parents' involvement in your transition process, and then ask you about some of the hormone treatments you underwent, because I think all that's important. First, were you or your parents informed of the long-term effects of the procedures and hormones that you were subjected to?
We had consent forms with a list of some of the side effects, and we did do consultations where we did speak about some of them, but it was in very vague terms. And I mean, as a child, it was a lot for me to process because, I mean, I was perfectly healthy, and children tend to think that they're invincible, that nothing can get them. And with all these things being listed, it was hard to know which of these I would experience. And most of the side effects that I experienced, most of the ones that I'm experiencing today, actually, were not even listed on these forms, so I had no idea. And children just don't know what permanence is because they've only been in the world for so many years.
It's an important legal principle that we have informed consent, fully informed consent for life-altering medical procedures. And are you then suggesting that it was not really full informed consent?
I mean, no matter how much information they would have given me, as a child, I just would not have been able to consent to this. And my parents were required to sign off on these, but it was under duress. I don't think it was really consent. It was coercion. They were given the false dichotomy of either a child transitions or she dies. But transition almost killed me.
And the evidence suggests that that is a common practice, regardless of what's been said here today. And there's some other things that are very disturbing. One aspect of the current child movement about this sex change movement that's particularly pernicious is the so-called off-label medications. One that's well known is leuprolide acetate, or it's commonly known as Lupron, to chemically alter boys and girls, not by surgery, but chemically. It's
Yes.
the same thing. There's a long list of pharmaceutical drugs that medical personnel across the country are using to, for example, shut off the testosterone production in young boys to make them more feminine looking, or to shut off the estrogen production in young girls to make them more masculine looking. So I'm going to say for the record, post-hearing, we have 5 days. I'll enter some of the articles that detail a list of these chemical drugs being used on children for purposes that are not approved by the FDA. But Ms. Cole, was one of those puberty blockers that you were prescribed Lupron?
Yes, I was put on Lupron.
And what was the purpose of that in your hormone treatment?
Just to stop the natural production of my hormones to make way for the exogenous testosterone.
Does it concern you, as it does us, that some pharmaceuticals are being used to chemically mutilate some children today that were never explicitly approved for that purpose by the FDA?
Incredibly so.
And to my knowledge, there's currently no effort underway by the FDA to explicitly approve these pharmaceuticals for these purposes.
And they shouldn't.
And they shouldn't. The time's expired for the time that was yielded to me, and I thank the chairman. And now I recognize myself for my 5 minutes finally, so I'll keep going here. The last time I checked, it was still illegal under federal law to use FDA-approved pharmaceuticals for an unapproved or off-label use, and yet we're seeing that very commonly in this field. Ms. Cole, do you find it concerning that medications that were used on you or on countless other children across the country for a reason contrary to the original purpose they were approved for, you've said that's something that concerns you, disturbs you, it shouldn't be allowed, right?
Very much so.